Step F Theory Book, page 32, Scrambled Primaries. At the top of the page, we have 9 blocks. 3 different 1 chords, 3 different 4 chords, and 3 different 5/7 chords. Let's look at the column that has the 1 chords. In bass clef, the first 1 chord we see is a C major chord. Underneath of that, the next 1 chord we see is a D major chord. Underneath of that, the next 1 chord we see is a G major chord. In the column that has the 4 chords, the first 4 chord under the column is a G major. It's a G major because the top of the 4th is a G. The one under that is a C major. It's a C major because the C is the top of the 4th. The one under that is a F major. It's an F major because the top of the 4th is the F. Let's look at the column that has the 5/7 chords. The first 5/7 chord is a D7. It's a D7 chord because the root is the top of the 2nd, and because there's a 2nd in it, it's the D7. The next 5/7 chord we have is a G7. It's a G7 because G is the top of the 2nd. Because there's a 2nd in it, it makes it a G7 chord. The last 5/7 chord we see is an A7 chord. It's an A7 chord because A is the top of the 2nd, and it's an A7 because it has the 2nd in it. Now, which is the 1 chord for C major? The C-E-G is C major chord. Which is the 4 chord for the C major? C-F-A, the F major chord, is the 4 chord in C major. Which is the 5/7 chord for C major? G7. The G is the 5 chord in the key of C major. Now let's look at G major. Where's the 1 chord? G major, of course, is the 1 chord for G major. Which chord is the 4 chord? C major is the 4 chord for G major. Which is the 5/7 chord? D7 is the 5/7 chord for G major. D major, where's the 1 chord? D major is the 1 chord in D major. Which one is the 4 chord? G major is the 4 chord in D major. Which one is the 5/7 chord in D major? A7. A is the 5th note of the D major scale, so A7 is the 5/7 chord. Let's take a look at the chord progressions. For the C chord, C major, C, F, C, G7, and C. That would be 1, 4, 1, 5/7, 1. In the key of G major, 1, 4, 1, 5/7, 1. The letter names of the chords would be G major, C major, G major, D7, G major. In the key of D major is the 1 chord, G major is the 4 chord, D major is the 1 chord, A7 is the 5/7, D major is the 1 chord.